everybody. You're listening to the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Billy Z.
I'm Justin Allen.
I'm Brian Bittard.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Matt Broussard.
And we're going to be talking about independent comics this time around. When we recorded our last episode, there was so much DC and Marvel talk that we really ran out of time. So we figured we'd just shift the focus over to books that are away from the big two. Also want to give you all a heads up that in the case of Mr. Brian and Mr. Steve, we are at the mercy of hotel Wi-Fi. And as somebody who has lived in that world for years and years, we're just going to be patient. And if we have to break and click in, you'll never hear it, but it'll be rough on us. So just thought I'd let people know that. I don't know. We're open with everyone. But we were also coming off of San Diego Comic-Con weekend. And I think we would be remiss to not mention some of the big news that happened at that event. So I'm going to go in terms of rookiness in reverse. So, Mr. Broussard, out of the news that came out of this year's San Diego Comic-Con, what has you most excited?
The only bit of sort of trailer action that I wanted to sample first and sort of spoil for myself was the trailer for the next X-Men film, X-Men Apocalypse. My first impression is that it looks a little less carefully marketed than Days of Future Past. Days of Future Past sort of was really careful about how it engaged, the audience at first, like what they wanted to reveal about it, exactly what the tone and the source material was going to be. This is just sort of a little bit more varied in tone. I'm not really sure what to expect. I mean, it actually kind of reminded me of the marketing for The Last Stand, which, kind of made me cringe. But otherwise, I'm really excited about the decisions they're making in terms of which characters to include and the casting. And I'm really happy with, the creatives on this. It's Bryan Singer again. So I think it'll be a good X-Men film, but it definitely seems less sort of predictable in its approach than the first two prequel films.
Any of you guys see this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I only saw the picture of Storm and Apocalypse, so.
The problem I have from what I've seen of Apocalypse, and admittedly it was shaky cam, and I withhold real proper judgment until later, but I did not care for what I saw of Apocalypse. And I'm a little torn on the idea of his Four Horsemen. I don't know if it's not really a spoiler. I guess it's been in this trailer, maybe. I don't know. But spoiler, not only is Archangel or Angel going to be there, but Storm, Magneto, and who was the other one? Mystique? No, Psylocke.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I'm a little just kind of about it. But I trust Singer with the X-Men. Pretty much he has a perfect track record of his X-Men movies. So again, it's early days. I'll go see it. I might really like it. Who knows? But I was underwhelmed by just that one little thing. And the voice, which they said they're thinking they're going to redo the voice. That was one thing I read, but I don't know. Yeah, underwhelmed a little bit.
Yeah, they've at least got a year before it comes out, so there's plenty of time for tweaking, changing, digital color filters and obviously vocals and audio. So hopefully there's not going to be anything that is too disappointing. And in fact, sometimes a preview doesn't do the actual movie justice, especially this early. So I'm kind of hoping that it was just what they could throw together, and that we're going to get a really good movie out of it.
Okay, Steve, well, you have the mic right now, and you're next in line. So what out of SDCC did you enjoy seeing?
Well, definitely wasn't a movie thing, because there were some interesting trailers, but what excited me the most was the Vertigo announcement. Mm-hmm. You guys know that I'm a huge Vertigo booster, and I've been, alternately disappointed by what I've been seeing lately out of Vertigo, just kind of the feel that it was dying. I love some of the books that are coming out of there, but just the lack of new announcements and how things were more mini-series or series that were ending kind of were disappointing. But starting this October, we're going to get 12 new series coming out of the Vertigo title, or the Vertigo imprint, which kind of brings me some hope that it'll be continuing, that we've got a shot of making this great legacy imprint of DC continue for many years. And there's some great titles that out there, some great creators and artists and writers that I'm really excited to see. We've got Gilbert Hernandez and Darwin Cook, collaborating on a book, The Twilight Children. We've got another Gail Simone book, and I'm kind of hoping this turns out a little bit better than Katana. We've got some interesting concepts like Rob Williams on Follow, and some other interesting ones that are a little bit lighter in tone, like Peter Milligan's New Romancer, and potentially the new Lucifer book, which of course is going to be coming out right in time for the new TV series on Fox. So I'm really excited about this. There's some really interesting concepts, art ops in particular, by Sean Simon with art by Michael Allred. I'm already really, really intrigued by this with the few panels that I've seen of artwork on it. So and the tagline for it. So I'm not sure if anybody else was interested in hearing about those, but I'm really excited.
Something I'd heard a rumor about, and I don't know if DC's ever commented about this, but from what I understand, that the business deals are much more along the lines of Image. The creators that do provide books for Vertigo are not locked into film rights. Though they own the properties, there were still some proprietary issues that DC, kept on going with. And, I can think of at least 2 projects that hit big at Image that if you had put the Vertigo stamp on it, you wouldn't have batted an eye. So I think they probably lost some revenue from that. And it's good to see that they're paying enough attention to the imprint to try to keep it going.
Well, definitely, Image is their biggest competitor. And, what you used to expect from Vertigo, you're getting in spades at Image right now. So, I'm really hoping that this actually brings Vertigo back to being a contender.
Brian, you wanted to add something?
No, I was just saying I figured the deal was, like you said, they had to make some adjustments to get someone like Gil Hernandez and Darwin Cook to sit down. And, to do a project together, yeah, of course. But in this day and age, they would take it to Image, no question. That's just how everybody's been doing it. So they had to restructure the deal to get this kind of talent. And everybody else has signed up, which is great. They had to learn the lesson, So I'm thrilled. Like when I saw that they were doing that book, I lost it. I couldn't believe it. The rest of them look interesting. I've never read Lucifer. It's on my list to read, but I'm really excited to check that out. And then I'll check out some of the other books too.
Yeah, I think with Lucifer that there was a 2.5 year period where everything was out of print in terms of the trades. That'll definitely change with the series coming up. But I remember one time looking into Lucifer, and there were some crazy prices for the trades that were like 4, 5, 6 trades in. So I'm sure that'll change in terms of their legacy projects there, have that easily available. Brian, you have the mic, and you're next in line. And what came out of SDCC that had you revved?
So I was in New Orleans while SDCC was going on, and I was sort of busy drinking and doing meetings and things. But in between meetings and in between late nights of drinking, I did catch up with some of the news. And other than the Vertigo thing, which floored me, probably my most excited moment was the Doctor Who trailer, and the fact that they announced that the date for the new Doctor Who coming out will be, I think, September 19th, which I have to go back and check, see if that's earlier or later than last year. But either way, it doesn't matter. I'm just stoked, and more so than just the fact that it was announced it's coming back, which we knew. But the chick from Game of Thrones, Maisie, what's her last name? Williams. Thank you. She, and this could just be editing. If you watch the trailer at the very end, after everything, and they do the sting or whatever, they do the Doctor Who logo. She basically says something like, "What took you so long, old man?" Now, that alone could mean whatever. But they have said repeatedly, I think, in interviews, that she plays a character that's fairly important to the Doctor. And I know the speculation online, of course, is rampant. That is actually either his granddaughter Susan in a new body, or it's River Song in a new body, which I doubt. Or, again, like everything else in Doctor Who, it's misdirection. It's somebody completely we don't even expect it to be. So, like, I'm very excited by her showing up and whoever she is. The villains look great. The Doctor's outfits are different, and his hair is a little crazy. Kind of going for the big messy hair thing from his old hairdo, which who cares? But it's just sort of a thing I noticed. But it just looks like more of the same kind of Doctor Who fun and adventure that I really, really love. And Capaldi's great. So yeah, I was thrilled to see that. They also showed more about the Doctor Who Lego game called Dimensions, which seriously, like, just having a Lego collectible game a la Skylanders and Disney Infinity and Marvel Infinity, or what, all that stuff. Amiibo, like, just having that with Legos, you already got my money. Okay, your hand is already way down in my pants, and you're going past now the wallet, and you're giving me a good old grope when you show me Doctor Who going to the Portal Aperture Labs and fighting Daleks and hang out with Batman and Gandalf. I mean, like, you might as well just finish me off, okay? Because you got me. I couldn't. It was just too much. So anyway, that was my favorite.
So basically, you're calling it the other tagline for Dimensions is Lego Happy Ending.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. Absolutely. Yep. Amen. So that was my moment.
Okay, Justin, you're next in line. How about you?
Well, I actually, one of these really went under the radar, and it surprisingly I didn't see more people talking about it. Was DC's Milestone announcement about how they are bringing pretty much everything back under Jim Lee and Jeff Johns. Actually, it's Reggie Hudlin and Denise Cowan.
Mm-hmm.
You guys hear any of this?
No, not really.
Yeah,
I was excited. I was excited because of the zombie announcement. I'm a fan of zombie.
Yeah, I like zombie.
Yeah, they're bringing back all the Milestone characters with it's called Earth M. It's going to be the Dakota universe. You're going to see Static Shock, Icon, Rocket, Hardware, Zombie. And it looks like how this is going to work is there's going to be at least 2 hardcover graphic novels, Earth M titles, kind of like the Earth one that JMS is doing. There's going to be 2 of these published annually, as well as certain miniseries and one-shots. And then there's going to be, the agreement also has the Milestone content, the originals, collected editions, both in print and digital for the first time. So, I mean, this looks like this is, especially since DC is working for like multiculturalism, trying to get more than just your typical Caucasian hero. I think this is a good thing for DC.
I think it's a good thing, but at the same token, these characters have had chances for 20 years. And the only one that ever had any resonance, on a mass scale was Static. It can always be, somebody comes in and does a revitalization and suddenly Hardware hits or Icon hits, and they can't even name a book Icon now because DC screwed up. It almost seems to me that this is interested in it, but for me also, I've always felt these characters are stuck in the 90s. They're 90s kind of names, they're 90s kind of abilities and powers and gadgets, and I feel like you've given these characters a chance time and time again, and they really haven't resonated. So, I don't know.
You don't like Zombie? You didn't
I
enjoy
like Zombie.
They brought that back recently, or not recently, but
yeah.
With Fraser Irving art. Oh my God, it was amazing.
Yeah, no, that recent Zombie was excellent. But
yeah, that I'm excited about.
But are we going to, get that across the board?
Yeah, I don't know.
I hate to be a naysayer, but it just seems to me that we've had tiny reboots in the past, and these characters don't stick around.
Well, I think a lot of it the last time was basically because Dwayne McDuffie passed away kind of right after his JLA run.
Yeah,
who knows what he would have... I mean, honestly, the sales on those were doing well. People were reacting pretty well to the inclusion of these guys, and then we kind of got stopped in the middle of this story, and the people who took over just kind of never followed up on anything.
Yeah, but also at the same token, that was before his death.
Right, that's what I'm saying. That was before.
before his death. That was when he revealed editorial secrets and got canned off the book.
So
there's a gap there. But I hate to be a naysayer about this, but it just seems after a point that you have to be realistic about the appeal of these characters. And I don't
thought
see
it was
them
a good thing.
I think it's a good thing too. I just don't see them as, I don't understand a big investment with names that big with the expenditure of money that you'd be putting out. I just don't get it. And someone's gonna hate me for this. I know it. Someone I know who listens to the show is gonna absolutely hate me for saying this, but for me, the project that I was most interested in, I have to say, I thought the DC Comics trailers, and I know there's disagreement among us, I thought the two that they released of the films were pretty damn effective.
I agree with you.
And it might be a case of like, that's the best footage you're gonna get. They stick it in there, that's as good as it gets as the trailer. But I thought both Batman vs Superman and Suicide Squad were effective as in the pursuit of keeping certain people interested. I think it did the trick. But the one that I didn't even know was coming out was Vixen, as part of the CW Seed. And this is going to be an animated online series. It takes place in the Flash Arrowverse, and it uses the same voice talent as Flash and Arrow. And it's going to be in this platform called CW Seed, which is going to run concurrently with the other programs on the CW. And I believe there's a Supernatural tie-in too. Is that right? Steve, would you know?
No, surprisingly, I haven't heard anything about the Supernatural tie-in, but it's not to say that it can't happen.
Well, CWC does this a lot with a lot of their shows. Like, for example, America's Next Top Model. They will do like a 10-minute show that's online exclusive. They do that with a lot of their shows.
Yeah, but it seems like they're really expanding it this year.
It's possible.
Yeah. And I really like the character designs. I'm very excited I'm going to have that in my world along with the other stuff. So, yeah. And there were other things along the lines like the Micronauts and Rom returning, or some version of Micronauts and the Rom return. The Micronauts and Rom returning.
I thought that was going to be your squeal from SDCC, that or the Avengers meeting Batman 66.
Well, that was pretty cool. And I detailed, I do think that a cat fight, pun intended, between Emma Peel and whatever version of Catwoman they choose is going to be 7 shades of awesome. For me, the Micronauts was the Marvel series, and you can never do that again. Those toys didn't have any personality till that series came out. And, I've read the books that came out with the last relaunch, and it has a feel of incompleteness because of certain characters within the mythos that you just can't use. And they didn't try to use different things. They tried doing something different. One thing people forget with these toys, at least in Rom was like, as a toy, it was awful. They were like 4 points of articulation, and it didn't do anything. It had this thing it carried, and the things lit up, and it didn't do much. I'm sure Hasbro will do massive overhauling of that, but I can understand you thinking that might be my go-to.
On the topic of toys, the Masters of the Universe toys that look like the cartoon designs look amazing. Like I haven't really been into most of the like He-Man revival stuff over the last however many years it's been since they sort of did that second version of the cartoon. And most of the time the characters just look kind of, funny looking. But this the photos I saw from San Diego had some sort of run of the toys where they've like sculpted the faces and the costumes to look exactly like they look on the cartoon, and they're sculptural and they're really, really beautiful.
Now, is that through Matty Collector or is that just Mattel regular? Do you know?
I was a little confused about like who it was. I think it's possible it might even be a Mundo thing. The problem is that there were a whole bunch of different toy announcements, and the feed I was looking through, I couldn't really separate like what was sort of like the regular toys and what was going to be 3A or any of those other specialty companies.
Were there any exclusives you guys wish you got? Because this year I didn't see anything would motivate me to reach out to somebody going and say, "Can you grab me one?"
Having never gone, I don't really know like what kind of stuff happens. I mean, I remember in the past people getting excited about, the scavenger hunt stuff for the marketing for, the Dark Knight and, stuff like that. But this is the kind of stuff where, like, it's the toy news I usually see, like, trickle down into, blogs and stuff like that later on. And I don't actually usually follow the San Diego news that closely. So I don't know, maybe you guys have more experience with it.
You know what I would have got if I was there, or if I had thought to ask, although I'll probably see him in New York, I don't know. Cena Grace had a dress-up Cena Grace print or something. I don't know if they were color forms or cutouts or whatever.
Paper doll, yeah. That.
Paper doll. I would totally have gotten one of those. Oh my God, Cena. I saw pictures from his outfit there, and God bless him. He's rocking the high shorts, and the Daisy Dukes, and these whatever shoes, and like a jacket. I'm like, man, I wish I could have seen him there. And Ed Luce was there. Like, there were a lot of gay creators there that a couple articles have been published listing everybody. I'm sure we can refer them, and I think we shared one of them already. But like, I was really jealous with all the queer creators that were at SDCC this year, and Jeremy Owens was there, like a good friend of ours, and
Steve McIsaac. Yeah.
Steve McIsaac. Oh, I got my Steve McIsaac Kickstarter in the mail.
Oh, good.
I don't know if you guys got your. Did anybody else do that?
It's still on the way.
Yeah, okay, mine's on the way.
Yeah, I was really excited. I was so excited that I got it, and I opened it up and I looked at it, and then I had to leave for the airport, and I was like, probably can't bring this on the plane and read it in polite company. So, but no, I was really excited for everybody who made it out there and had a good time. And
yeah, Joe Glass from England made it out there for the Pride.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, there were a lot.
And I started following Dave Quantick and Bill Furnick from the Corporeals because of the posts that I saw on social media about San Diego. So they do like a series of fun editorial cartoons. My favorite being there's like a drawing of a unicorn, and he's standing in the middle of a bar full of like animal bears, and he's like, "Act cool, man, act cool." It's really cute.
Oh, cool.
It's sort of a little bit reminds me of The Far Side, but like with a lot of gay themes.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and Sam Kite said he picked up his copy of Power there, so I guess Prism was carrying it at their booth.
Sweet.
Well, as promised, we're moving on to independent comic talk, and let's go the reverse order. Justin, what are you reading right now in the independent world that has you captivated?
Well, there were actually... I know we're going to talk about Archie #1 later, so I'll skip that. There's two that I've liked that I've gotten recently. Picked up #6 today. Has anybody been reading Secret Identities?
No.
Nope.
It is an Image title. Jay Farber, Brian Jones, or Joins. Brian Joins. The art is by Elias Cryazis. I apologize. I have no idea how to say that. And it's a superhero team, and it's based in. They're an American team, but they're based in Canada. It's kind of a long story. And what's really interesting is the team's leader also happens to be the daughter of the President of the United States. It goes through, you get to see glimpses of everybody's real life world while they're also fighting the bad guys, and they become infiltrated by someone who is trying to get their secret identities for some reason. We're not entirely sure why. I believe it is a 7-issue series, and #6 just came out today. So I had that picked up for me today. But it is a very well written, very well drawn comic. I can't see why anybody here wouldn't like it. So it's called Secret Identities. 1 through 6 is out. The other one that I really, and it surprised me that I liked, it's not my normal type, and it's actually from our friends at Action Lab.
Okay.
Gravedigger.
Tell us about that.
Did anybody read this?
No, I have the press copy of one.
Okay, this
saved somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, this is Gravedigger, The Predators, Part 1. And it reminds you of an old style private eye narrative. You know, like you can almost see the dame walk through the door. You know, and it's that kind of narrative. And it's this guy who is in probably near Miami, wakes up, the girl he's been with is dead, and it turns out her dad's a mobster. And he's on the run and he didn't kill her. So the whole story is trying to figure out who killed him or who killed her while he's trying to stay alive. Like I said, it's by Action Labs. It is trying to find out Miles Burchett. Does that sound? I'm trying to see if that's his. Yeah, that's who it is. Miles Burchett and Christopher Mills are the two artists, are the two creators on it. Okay. So, and it leads off with a pretty neat. It has a nice mystery. It's got lots of very good action scenes. Like, I mean, you can almost see how everything's moving. It's almost like stills from a movie. And like I said, it's a great, and it's black and white too, which is kind of gives it that whole PI style look.
Just going back to Jay Farber, he had written a couple of series for Image. Noble Causes, was that the name of that? About the wealthy superhero family? And I think that's actually the first appearance of Invincible, is in an issue of that. And he also wrote a series called Dynamo 5, which kind of follows the same idiom of family-oriented superheroes. Can't claim to have read any of that stuff, but the DC books that he wrote, like when he was on Titans, I liked. So I would definitely be interested in checking that first book out there, Justin.
Yeah, Secret, like I said, it was a fun, it has a nice team, and they're not your typical Superman, Batman type style. They're very different characters, very different heroes, and it's actually a lot of fun.
Okay, Brian, you're next up in line. What you reading in the indie world that you're liking?
Well, I want to start with something that's sort of more towards our proclivity, our identity. Dash from Northwest.
Oh,
did I steal yours?
No, but talk about it. I'll be happy to talk about it with you.
Okay, good. So I had reached out and talked to Dave Abersole, writer of Dash, after I think Northwest sent me a review copy of number 1, and I was like, man, this is good. Like, not a big fan of the hard-boiled detective story. I'm trying to gain more of an appreciation for it. Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett, not, unrelated. They're great writers of these hard-boiled detective novels and crime fiction. So I'm trying to sort of give that a try now. But part of it's because of this book. Like, Dash from Northwest is a series, an ongoing, that actually really takes that trope and explores it with a gay character. A gay male character so far. So, like, it's set in the period of the 40s. It's a guy, his name's Dash Malone, and he is out. I mean, he basically has no problem in at least the first 2 issues. I haven't read number 3 yet. Like, being out to his colleagues with the police department, his secretary. He has a lover. Tragedy strikes, and his lover is killed in the first issue. But, like, it captures that, what I think of, certainly when I think of, like, Chinatown, when I think of even Blade Runner, like, it really captures that sort of sensibility with a gay character. So I'm really happy to keep getting more of these. The art by Delia Gable, it's very clean. It's very well done. It definitely has a little of that indie polish on it, if you will. Like, it's not a book that I would say is, like, super slick. And, I mean, and I'm trying to, like, be nice here, but I mean, if you picked it up, you're going to have a good read, and the storytelling is phenomenal. But, like, the coloring and the finish, you're going to definitely get sort of that indie vibe. But it's color. It's not black and white. And it's got this cool Egyptian mummy, maybe like zombie mummy cult thing going that they've revealed. And, like, there was a game back in the late 80s called oh God, it was from Sierra Online. I gotta look it up now. Crap, I should look this up before.
Is
But
it
there was like
Gabriel Knight?
no before Gabriel Knight or around the same time.
Hmm.
There was another book, Laura Bow. I think that was it, Laura Bow.
Oh, Laura
And
Boat. Yeah, where it was 1920s.
Flapper era, murder mystery, night at
Yep.
the that game. Oh my God, I loved that era of that game. And this is a little later, 40s, 20s, not quite the same, but that murder mystery sort of supernatural element, at least maybe like that is catnip that I just absolutely forgot about. And so picking up Dash number one, it all came back. There's some racy scenes, nothing too crazy. It's not class comics or anything here, but it really really hit the spot, and I'm very excited. One of these trips, I'm going to actually get to meet Dave, and I don't know if Bill, did you get to meet him up at one of the shows?
I met him twice in the last few months.
Okay.
I saw him at Mocha, and I saw him at FlameCon, and he made a point of telling me at FlameCon how much he enjoyed your anti-Gotham rant on the
Really?
show there,
I
Brian.
didn't know
Yes.
that. That's awesome.
Yes, he listens to the show. This was also a book that I had planned on talking about, but Mr. Brian beat me to it, and I'm going to second and third everything that he said. Brian, I'm also with you in terms of not really having a lot of exposure to, the Mickey Spillanes and the Raymond Chandlers, the Sam Spade sort of hard-boiled detective books. I'm much more comfortable with books by people like James Ellroy that operate in the same terrain but have that modern-day filter on them. And I think Dash is definitely shaking hands with somebody like James Ellroy. It's kind of like James Ellroy at a tea dance.
Nice. That's a good way of putting it.
There's definitely a gay sensibility, but there's so many things I like about this book. When you mentioned the zombie cult, when that happens at the end of issue 2, I did not see that coming at all.
Oh no, not at all.
In the space of 3 pages, it became a totally different series.
Which I love.
And,
I mean, it keeps it
yeah.
fresh. It keeps it like you don't know what's going to happen. You definitely feel like you're on one track, and the train just jumps and you're over somewhere else, which can be bad in some stories. But in this story, because it's such an open, like blank slate, it's very entertaining.
I think Dave is a really good storyteller. I can't imagine how much fun it is putting words in the mouth of Cindy Crenshaw, his secretary.
Oh my God.
I just adore whenever the panel shifts to her.
I mean, she is the quintessential like gay best friend. Like, I don't want to say the word, but like fruit fly kind of thing. Like, I hear Kathy Najimy's voice when I read her.
You can just think of like 1940s movies, like that wisecracking sidekick.
Oh yeah, no, I got you. Yep,
it's there, like, hey,
yeah.
Excuse me, in spades. I agree with you with the art. It's definitely rooted in the independent world, but as you said, Delia, she's a really, really powerful storyteller. I have read issue 3. It follows up on the more supernatural elements of the story, yet it ties it into other events that happened earlier in the book that I didn't see coming either. I'm really happy that this book is formatted as an ongoing series. I just think Dave's doing a fantastic job on this book. I think it's a remarkably well-written book. Some things that shouldn't necessarily be inviting to me is exploration so far of cop culture in 1940s. Yeah, I'm not interested in that. He makes it fascinating.
No, exactly.
So,
like, I was shocked at how much time he spent in the second issue dealing with that, and I'm like, wow, this is like not going the way I would have thought. It was really, yeah.
And when you do hit 3, you will see that Delia is also very good as an action choreographer.
Well,
you'll find that out.
That one fight with a cop in the issue 2 was really well choreographed too.
That was.
And I'll tell you this, Dash's boyfriend, the guy who got killed, Plank.
Yep.
Pretty cute. I was like, I wouldn't be my type or anything, but man, I kind of had a little thing going. I'm like, and then that makes it even more like a gut punch when they kill him. It's like, yeah. No, I mean, I'm really thrilled that this exists. I love Northwest. We love Zan and all the stuff that they do up there and all the books, and we've talked about some of them in the past. But like this, if you're listening to the show and your LCS doesn't get them, the good news for you is you can go to Northwest and order it online, or you can go to Comixology, which is actually what I did, because for some reason I had one, and I think I did get 3 as a review, but I didn't have two. And I'm like, oh, I'll just go buy it on Comixology. Like, so like there is an absolute way for anyone with an iPhone, Android, whoever, whatever platform you have, to go get this book. And it looks great in on a tablet. And then you do it out to your LCS and be like, hey, check this out. You need to buy this, which I plan to do when I get back to Orlando. So.
And I have to say, if you are buying the print copy, they use very high quality paper. It's a very nice presentation. I think very highly of this book, and I'm glad to hear that you do too.
Yeah, no, definitely. So other than that, I mean, I wanted to throw that in there because, like I said, I've really been admiring this for a while. I mean, let's face it. I talk about Hickman all the time. Pretty much every one of his damn books is amazing. I love East of West, probably the most. But I talked to Nick Batara at Heroes, and he was talking about Manhattan Projects. And I talked to Ryan Bodenheim. He was talking about Dying in the Dead. And, like, I think they were speaking somewhat in confidence, like what's coming up. So I'm not going to go, like, telling tales after school or anything. But both books are so good. And Hickman has such a great team that he works with. There are delays. I mean, Nick was really kind of sheepish about the fact that he'd been taking Marvel gigs, and Hickman had been giving him a hard time, like, hey man, you might be getting good page rates or whatever, but you don't own anything. Like, Hickman is really kind of an awesome manager for his artists. Like, he really gives them great business advice, and he's like, stop it, what are you doing? This book, Manhattan Projects, is amazing. I love the first 25 issues a lot, and then when they relaunched with the whole premise for doing sort of story arcs of like sets of characters at a time, like, I totally bought that because I always felt like there was too big of a cast, but like just such good stuff. And I have to mention, and this is because, I mean, I'll call this a point of privilege here. Ryan Brown is an artist that I've known for a long time, going to Heroes, and his God Hates Astronauts series is wrapping up at Image. There is one more issue. I don't know when it comes out, probably in the next couple weeks, number 10. And that will finish the second sort of trade of the series. But if you have not gone and checked that out, if you are a child of the 90s, of video games, of blowing on your NES cartridges, your Power Gloves, I mean, I guess a little bit of 80s too in there. But like Ryan has such a fun sensibility of just wacky humor, bizarre amalgams of pop culture, anthropomorphic, animal whatevers. He riffs on like the New Gods. Like, it's like everything in the kitchen sink is thrown into this book. And he's only stopping, honestly, because the numbers haven't been great. I mean, it's one of those things where he wants to do more, but he wants to also do other things to sort of offset the cost. But this is his baby. And like, if you just go buy the trades, like, these will be in print for a while. You will love them. You will then probably want to give them to some other people. So of course, buy another copy. You know what I mean? Because like they make good money off these trades at Image. And like, his next series he's going back to Blast Furnace, which was another thing he did kind of as a comic a day. Also hilarious and ridiculous at the same time. So like, if you're really interested in sort of off the wall goofball humor, you really got to check out God Hates Astronauts. I think it's highly underrated, although a lot of comic pros love it. And I think Ryan's going to be a very busy guy for a long time to come because of his technique has just become really solid over the years, since he did the first volume of God Hates Astronauts. But anyway, but go out and get it, because I mean, he wants to make more, and if people buy those trades, we're gonna have another tiger eating cheeseburger and not Gnarls Barkley. I can't think of the guy's name. What's the guy from Police Academy and
Carl Winslow. It's Gnarls Winslow.
Gnarls Winslow. Yep. Like just bizarre amalgam humor. That's so good.
How many issues are there?
There's 10. So the 10th is coming out soon, and that's the second. So that's the second and third volume. The first volume you might still be able to find online. He does a webcomic, and he does, I think, still sell the. He did it through Kickstarter, so I got like the the digital, and I think I got a soft copy. Like, you could probably go out there and still find him. And if you go to a show where he's at, he usually has a couple copies of those still as well. But you don't.
Yeah, I had gotten the independent versions from him at tables.
Yeah, you don't need to.
And I have to say, I'm one of those people that just trailed off on the Image series.
Well, a lot of people did, and I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was because the story kind of meandered a bit. Like, the first couple issues were really solid and focused, and like they took the story in a direction that sort of, for once, made sense with the title. If that makes sense, because before that you were like, what does this have to do with astronauts? Like, what? But like, it is just one of those stream of consciousness romps, and he has these hilarious little mini comics and a lot of comic artists that he's friends with in Chicago, and actually all over, but definitely more the Chicago guys. Like, they all contribute, so you got some great little backups in there, and it's just fun. I mean, this is what comics is made for. Great fun, ridiculous storytelling that you're never going to see in any other medium except comics. So highly recommended, and that's all I got.
Okay. Steve, how about you?
Well, like I said, I kind of have a little bit of a pile. I did want to jump in on what Brian had said about God Hates Astronauts. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I love God Hates Astronauts since I first saw the webcomic, and I actually am one of the proud owners of a hardcover edition from his Kickstarter. And yeah, I mean, it's great. It's wonderful. It's sad to see the Image monthly series is ending now, but definitely I hope he does return to it. I hope he gets that chance.
Steve, do you know how much he's charging
sticking
for that?
with him,
do you know how much he's charging for that hardcover right now at his table when he sets up? Do you know how much?
You know, I think it's about 25.
Oh, well, okay. So he may have done another one. The one I saw at the table at Heroes was $100.
Oh, I'm guessing. Yeah, I know. I got my copy for 25. It was one of the last that he had available.
Okay. Yeah, I just saw that the other day, and I meant to ask him, like, what the heck? Why is it $100? But I mean, I figure it's because like his last one, or he had some crazy thing, and Anyway, so I'm sorry. I want to throw that in there.
No problem. Yeah, if you can still find a hardcover edition, if you can find it for a reasonable price, go for it. If you're buying it straight from him, pay him whatever he's asking for it. Seriously. But yeah, sticking with the Image books, and again, Image has been really knocking them out of the park recently. They've been giving a lot of chances to different creators to kind of follow their visions, picking up some new artists, picking up some new writers, and I kind of want to go on two books right now that are being put out by Justin Jordan. And for people who don't really know his work too well outside of Green Lantern and a couple of his other projects with DC and Marvel, but he's actually been putting out Luther Strode for the past several years. Right now it's on the third volume called The Legacy of Luther Strode. He started out with The Strange Talent of Luther Strode, and then The Legend of Luther Strode was volume 2. Both of those are available in trades now. And if you're not familiar with the story, it's basically about a scrawny high school kid who discovers a kind of like a Charles Atlas type workout regimen. Turns out that workout regimen is more of a bizarre training tool to create super powerful killers as part of a secret underground society. And so he goes from scrawny kid to enormous, muscle bunny wet dream that, almost overnight, and, realizes that he has a talent for killing things. Now, this, of course, he doesn't want to murder. He wants to be a good person. But the secret society makes that very hard for him to do. So that kind of starts off in the first book, in the first volume. In the second volume, he's kind of on the run a little bit, trying to get away from from this group. And then by the third book, he realizes that's not exactly something that he can really do. He's put down a few of the members of this society. And now it's basically up to him to put down the rest, so that one, he can be safe from being murdered spectacularly, and two, to make sure that the world is safe from these crazy killers. The art is has been since the beginning by Trad Moore, and Trad Moore is just he's amazing. His artwork is so distinctive and creative and colorful, and the colors are mostly by Felipe Sobrero. I think he's done the majority of the coloring work on the Luther Strode books, but it's just breathtaking. Some of the panel work, some of the composition that both Trad and Sobrero do just are amazing. If you're squeamish, these are not for you. There's more blood in these books than I think in any kind of yellow horror Italian horror movie from the 70s and 60s. There's just swaths of red all over it. Beautiful book, really fun. The characters, the backup characters, his girlfriend Petra and a couple other interesting sorts are just fun to read. His second book is called Spread. I think I've talked about that before. He's also doing that with Kyle Strom as the artist. Kind of post-apocalyptic, bizarre, conscious or sapient virus has taken over most of the world. Kind of like the alien from The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing. And it just follows a survivor named No and the baby that he finds who's immune to the spread, and just some of the other people that he picks up and meets along the way. Very violent, very twisted vision of the future. Very interesting storytelling. It's almost like a bit of Tarantino thrown in with George Romero, if you want to look at it in movie terms. Recommend both these books very highly. Legacy of Luther Strode is up to issue 2. Issue 3 is going to be coming out, I believe, next month. It's bi-monthly, while Spread is monthly, and it's up to just released issue number 8 a few weeks ago. So if you haven't read Luther Strode, the first 2 volumes are available in trade. And for Spread, the first volume of the first 5 issues story arc are available now as well. And I'll give the floor to somebody else.
Matt, how about you now?
Okay, my reviews this week come in 3 flavors. I've got mystery, I've got androgyny, and I've got controversy. So first I want to talk about issue 2 of Providence. It got weirder. It got more. It got juicier. There's a little bit more like romantic tension between the main character, Robert Black, and this new handsome detective in Brooklyn that he meets named Tom Malone. The mystery of this sort of arcane alchemical organization that he's sort of like finding all these traces of continues to unfold. He's finding these interesting pamphlets that he purchases from a Robert Soydam. And while he's over visiting with this fellow, he sort of sneaks into his basement where we get sort of our first taste of like full-on horror in the series. And that's pretty much all I'll say about that, because it's kind of fun just how subtle and unresolved the story is so far, and you're not really quite sure which elements are real and which ones are imagined. But I'm really enjoying Providence, and it's so funny. I really wouldn't have read this book before, so that's turning out to be one that's won me over in a big way. The second book I want to review, this is like become something I'm so excited about. I was already a big fan of Brandon Graham from Prophet, and he's teamed up with Marion Churchland to do a book called 8 House, and the first story for that is Arclight. And those words pretty much they didn't mean anything to me. And after reading the first issue, I'm still not exactly sure like what is going on, but it's essentially a fantasy story with a knight named Arclight, and he or she is sort of beautiful and masculine and strong and mysterious. And we don't get a lot of narrative in the first issue. It's sort of just a chance to establish setting and style. But the art from Marion Churchland is the most gorgeous thing I have read in a while. She sort of is doing these like roughly beautiful medieval outfits, and the whole thing is just so like elegant and pretty, and it's still got some of that like bizarre like bio fantasy that happens a lot in Prophet, where they encounter this sort of dying like creature that looks like it's sort of like a salamander, and they like basically show it to a goose, and the salamander just sort of crawls into the goose, and the goose turns red and grows some extra limbs and just starts walking around, and it's like one of the characters. So the whole thing was like so weird and beautiful that I was just like, that I'm sold. Just take me on this bizarre adventure. Like, go wherever you want.
I had no idea he was doing that. That's awesome.
Yes, and he's got another book out that I just picked up today that I haven't had a chance to read. That's called Island, and it's a magazine format with a changing schedule of artists and creators. And the first issue has Emma Rios, who I'm a big fan of, and an artist named Ludrow. And I fully don't know what the first issue is about. I just sort of flipped through it in the store. But if you're a fan of Brandon Graham's stuff like Multiple Warheads, it's there's a lot of content like that style in this.
Did you like King Cat? King Cat was amazing.
Yeah, that was pretty fun too. So yeah, I'll probably review Island at again at a later date when I have a chance to actually read some of the short stories. And from what I understand, the next issue will have Simon Roy and contributions from a couple of other creators too. So I'm really stoked about that. And the third book that I read this week, which really surprised me. I had no idea what I was getting into when I read this. I picked up Strange Fruit #1 from Mark Waid and J.G. Jones, and it takes place in Chatterley, Mississippi in 1927. It starts off being about Black workers being sort of antagonized and pressured into working for these I think they're trying to build I forget what the structure is. It's some sort of like river or something like that they need like public works infrastructure built, and they don't have enough workers, so they're trying to pressure people into working for them. And it sort of leads into a chase where the Ku Klux Klan are chasing this black man through the forest, and he stumbles upon a alien spacecraft that's landed, and the alien has taken the form presumably of like the first human that he encounters. And so he appears to be this giant, incredibly muscular black man. And then the Ku Klux Klan attempt to attack him, and they fail. He tears them to shreds. And the last page is incredibly like, well, it's not surprising, but I wasn't expecting the imagery of the main character in the book to don a Confederate flag as his only clothing. So, being Canadian, these images and these issues don't have as intense an emotional resonance with me. Like I'm not as freaked out about it, but it was still a little bit shocking for me to read while I was sitting in a coffee shop, and I was kind of like looking around, sort of hoping that people weren't thinking that I was like really into comic books with the Ku Klux Klan, like I was a little bit nervous, like, no, they're the bad guys in this book, so But it's beautiful to behold. J.G. Jones does just the most incredible painted artwork. It's very lifelike, which is good because I mean the story is intense. There's violence and hatred and antagonism and so it kind of needs that ultra realism to sort of like present it in the right manner. And it was funny reading. So the book right before that I read was also Mark Waid, and it was Archie #1, and so I was like, these two books are very different flavors, but both enjoyable. So I'm definitely going to pick up more issues of Strange Fruit. It was intense, and I'm very curious about where the story's going.
Okay, well, you opened the door to Archie #1. Matt, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, it's funny. I'm not an Archie fan. I never have been. I always thought that the flat look of Archie comics was, the opposite of what I wanted out of, comic books and superhero comic books. So it's funny to be, taking a chance on Archie after so many years. And but this is what this reboot is sort of perfect for. It's the Archie book for people that aren't Archie fans. And I really enjoyed it. It was engaging. It felt like Saga without any aliens in it. Partially because Fiona Staples does the art, and there's a lot of like facial modeling and expressions that are sort of familiar, which isn't a criticism at all. I mean, Fiona Staples is incredible. She is a powerhouse, like how much artwork she can create, and it's all very consistent and very dynamic and action packed. I love the colors and everything. The story is like a good light, it's just got enough like rom-com drama to it to make you want to figure out like what's going on with the characters. And I don't know how it compares at all with like the appeal of regular Archie comics. I mean, the only other Archie comic book I have is Archie versus Predator. So you guys tell me, like, some of you are more experienced Archie fans. Like, how did this go over with you guys?
I loved it. I mean, I thought it was a great way to start off, especially for somebody who doesn't know anything about Archie. And it was very, I don't want to say it, like Mean Girls Jawbreaker style. Someone's walking through and everybody's talking about that person, and it's almost I almost looked at it as it could have been like a TV show or a movie. And when you consider nothing major really happened, it was just a great way to set up the tone of the series and introduce the characters. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I'm gonna second and third that. Of course, just like Matt, I'm not a big fan of Archie. The two books I own are just like this: Archie versus Predator, and this new Archie series. And like Justin said, it's definitely a good introduction for people who don't know anything about Archie. But I'd like to say that it's also a great reintroduction for people who, like me, kind of know about Archie by absorbing it, seeing the digests at the supermarket checkout, and kind of just generally knowing the story about Archie. It's very broad strokes. Here's Archie, his girlfriend, in this case, it's off again, is Betty, and here are his friends. And it's innocent. And I didn't expect something like this from Mark Waid, although I did kind of expect, hey, it's Archie. He can't really go off the rails on this one, or he shouldn't. But it's an innocent, very, I would say, maybe even all ages, I guess, is kind of a, it's a pretty obvious way of describing it. But it's the drama is not mean. It's not vicious, like it would be in maybe other teen high school drama type books. It's funny, it's light, it's great. It's just it's a feel good kind of book. And of course, Fiona Staples' art, like you said, it feels a little bit like Saga without the aliens, but just the way the character expressions work in this is perfect. It is like watching a TV series unfold, and it's a TV series that you can watch with like a young niece or nephew, you know, and you'd both get as much enjoyment out of it by watching it and reading it. I think it's fantastic. So
Now, isn't the CW having an Archie's live action coming up next fall?
I've heard rumors of it. I'm not sure when.
Yeah, it's in a pilot. They've committed to a
Okay.
pilot called Riverdale.
Yep.
And that would be great. I mean, and especially if they keep this type of tone, I could easily see it. Actually, I could see it more on ABC Family than.
Well, from what I understand, there's also going to be some mysterious elements of undercurrent of what's happening in Riverdale as part of the series. So that kind of tells me CW might be ideal.
Right.
Just be prepared for every third episode somebody saying, "I thought you were my friend."
Or what are we going to do in the dance this week? You know.
Yeah.
So I'm confused about the chronology of Archie and Riverdale, because when I picture Archie, I picture sort of like, I don't know, 50s style, like small town stuff with the varsity jackets and, you know, a certain style of hairdo and a certain style of, you know, clothing and stuff like that. And there were like sort of hints of that in this book where, like, one of the characters, and I can't remember his name, he's sort of like the greaser, and some, like, one of the girls makes a joke about how his hair is like really oily and stuff like that, and I sort of like got confused about whether or not this is present day or if this is like set in a different era, you know, because some of those tropes aren't exactly modern. So did this like sort of like stand out to anybody else?
Well, I mean, you're looking at characters that have been around since the 40s. So, and I actually like the inclusion in this issue of the original first appearance of Archie from Pep Comics, and it's a very striking difference between the Archie of 1941 and the Archie of 2015. This version of Archie definitely takes place, you know, in current era, so 2015, 2016, 2014, whatever, because they've got cell phones, they take selfies, they're playing video games. Some of the fashions are a little bit modern, but then again, you know, when it comes to fashion nowadays, there's always the throwback. You have like the hipster mode where you can look pretty fashionable and also like you stepped out of the 1950s or 1940s sporting magazine. But it's an interesting mix, and I think Fiona really captures sort of that strange mix of styles that is at once timeless but also pretty timely. So I don't know. I really enjoyed how that kind of appears, but it really does feel like the concepts are very 50s, but the presentation is very modern.
Well, I think what you're talking about is like with Reggie trying to push his way onto Betty. The one girl says the future's oily and living things die. She's talking about Reggie being a creep. Not necessarily that he's like a greasy, oily. I think that's just, it's a way for them to describe that he's not the nice person. But then the next panel afterwards, they show in his eye. Yeah, well, honestly, I thought that was a jacket. I mean, it has like a collar and everything. So, but you know, I mean, I see how it could be like the greasers type stereotype, but Reggie was never played that way. Reggie was actually always more of a preppy rich guy than he was ever a greaser.
I don't get my copy of Archie #1 till the end of the month, but I did get Archie 666, the final issue of the previous series. Brother, was this the most underwhelming final issue ever?
Yeah, I read it too, Bill.
I wouldn't be surprised if these 4 stories were inventory stories and they just framed them a little bit more to get an issue out of it.
I didn't read it that way. They felt like they were charged with writing like this sort of, hey, the world is ending, but, you know, Archie will never die, so tell your, like, your ultimate Archie story. Like, that's what it felt like by each of the creators that, Dan, you know, a lot of the guys do a lot of the Archie stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean,
in 5 pages. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were short and they were schmaltzy, and I'm sure you'll see them in like the digests. So that's one thing I meant to ask Dan Perrin about this. We had him in Orlando at MegaCon, and I spent some time talking to him. And now that I realize that his stuff does feed into the digests, because I picked it up one day in the grocery store, I kind of want to know how that whole relationship works. at least
Mhm.
how it worked previously, because we assume that stuff going forward isn't going to necessarily trip it back. But like, it was really kind of that. It felt just very, yeah. I totally agree with you. It was underwhelming. It was just kind of,
Right.
but I
have to say, it did seem like such a blown opportunity, given that the two books that there's the most media focus on right now out of that company are Afterlife with Archie and Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. Your freaking issue is numbered 666.
Yeah.
You know, my God, you're not familiar with a particular Iron Maiden song? You know, I mean, come on.
Yeah, I know, right?
I can't believe that was an opportunity that was blown like that. And, you know, and especially this title has been going on since the 1940s. Without this book, what's the longest numbered book now? Is it like Heavy Metal or Femforce or something?
You're not going to believe it, but it's Spawn.
Spawn? Oh my God.
Ah.
I would never have said Spawn.
Spawn has been running continuously since it first came out in 1992, and they've never renumbered.
What?
Yeah.
That breaks my heart.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
Wow.
have one more SDCC thing. I just thought of it when you mentioned that. So Grant Morrison's taking over editorial duties for Heavy Metal.
Right.
Uh-huh.
That sounds kind of awesome.
It's awesome, but I was kind of hoping he would do 2000 AD. I think his style of storytelling, because he's been a big contributor of 2000 AD, you know, back in the 80s and 90s. I would have expected him to go there, but Heavy Metal, I'm intrigued.
I do think, though, that they're going to totally overhaul the way they publish books, though, because anthologies just don't work here in the States. They just don't. I'm sure by saying the States, I'm going to extend that to the rest of North America, to Mr. Brossard as well. You know, I can't think of a single anthology series that, you know, you've had some books that came out of the box pretty strong, like Wednesday Comics or whatever, but they just don't work here. People just don't buy them. And, you know, you have stuff like Dark Horse Presents where the price point is so high that makes it prohibitive. And
well, they've lowered it. It's now $4.99. But what took its place was Vertigo's SFX and their quarterlies, which are $7.99.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot to ask somebody to shell out if there's one familiar name and 17 unfamiliar names.
Yeah.
I'm certain he's going to bring many friends with him on this. And the conceit of that book, of that particular format, where you can have it appear in the January issue and then not appear in the February or March and then back in the April. I mean, that's how that book is kind of structured. It's just when the artists are ready, or at least as far as Metal Hurlant was concerned. I've actually have more issues of Metal Hurlant than I have of Heavy Metal. Just nothing I ever bought. Anybody here was ever Heavy Metal? Yeah.
No. I had a bunch of issues of it a long time ago, but as the style of the contributors sort of shifted away from like Mobius type illustrators and more towards sort of more, I guess, like more modern, less sort of like Escher like like world building. I just kind of like felt like I didn't understand what the mandate of Heavy Metal was after a while. So, but I'll probably return to it now that this news is out, because this is pretty exciting. I mean, Grant Morrison's got, you know, a great way of like sort of bringing together really interesting creators. I love the illustrators he works with, so I'm really curious about what's going to happen with this book.
All right, cool. Well, I got some books to talk about. I've mentioned on the show before that there are some very, very, very large holes in my comic reading experience. I would include Cerebus in that. I would include Judge Dredd in that. And I would include Hellboy in that. Until this weekend. So I finally read some Hellboy.
Yo, Bill, I'm kind of jumping up and down and giggling right now, so that's
okay.
Good.
So let me tell you what I read, and you tell me if these were good choices, okay? I've had the trade of Seed of Destruction for a couple of years now, and the only portion of that I read was the #1 issue that was free in the Dark Horse app. It covers a lot of ground that was covered in the first movie. I'm familiar with the movies. It seems there's a bit of clunkiness to the pace. I don't know if that was the case of Byrne scripting and Mignola plotting and doing everything else. I thought it was fine. I thought it was it kept me interested, especially where I knew where certain elements of the story were already going. And in terms of, you know, Matt had just said it, world building, at least within those 4 issues, with the introduction of the 2 other principal BPRD members, Ape Sapien and Liz. Liz is her name, right?
Liz Sherman.
Yeah.
Liz, yeah, I got that right. Yeah, and the various villains from Rasputin to the others that were essentially cameos. I thought it did a really, really good job, and it was, especially since it came out in the '90s, was a bit more literate than I was anticipating, and that might be my regular prejudices I have of looking back at that period of comics, not too fondly, with some notable, amazing exceptions. And then, courtesy of a friend of mine, Matthew Guy from the 11 O'Clock Comics board, I received the 5-issue run of Hellboy and the BPRD, 1952. And it is credited on the writing chores by Mike Mignola and John Arcudi, and the artistic chores are handled by Alex Maleev and Dave Stewart on colors. Now, Steve, Dave Stewart basically, he colors everything within the Mignola-verse, pretty much. Is that right?
Yeah, and that includes includes BPRD, Hell on Earth, and Ape Sapien, and sometimes I think he's the colorist on some of the other minis like Witchfinder and the other BPRD yearbooks. It's interesting. Like he's pretty much all over there. It's a pretty good choice that you're going to have him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in this book, we have an 8-year-old Hellboy who's effectively a young adult, and he goes on his first mission with the current formulation of the BPRD. They go down to a South American country where there is some potential demonic possession happening in this small village. And I have to say that I guess franchise is well suited for the 5 or 6 issue miniseries, because at the very point where I was getting bored of something or was wanting something to change, it happened. And I was really, really surprised at how well paced the book was. Alex Maleev's art is so damn creepy in this book, which naturally felt the story. But then when you get in these human elements of whether it's townsfolk or the BPRD members talking one-on-one in relation to the events, it softens up appropriately. I think this probably was a very good choice for me to read as a second book. Was I right, Steve?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting that you started with BPRD, Hellboy and BPRD 1952. There were a series of BPRD books, starting with 1940, I think it went 1946, 47, 48, and it was just a continuous story. So you saw a young Hellboy as a small child, I guess, and him growing up, and then the group of BPRD agents and how they change and the relationships. So 1952 is kind of where those merge, where you get Hellboy actually active and the BPRD agents who've been kind of established in the previous, yearbooks, going on a mission together. But I mean, it's a great. If you've read Seed of Destruction and you go to 1952, there is a continuity there. Like, you don't feel like you've missed anything.
At all. I really felt like I was reading, in some ways, the prequel after the first issue.
Yeah.
As I said, with how tight the pacing was in this book, that I could see me going for a mini-series here and there. It's kind of daunting, the notion of jumping headfirst into the Mignola-verse. And, some things that I've read... Is Baltimore set in that verse? Or is that outside of it?
Yes and no. I mean, it does have some shared elements, but you can almost kind of think of it as an alternate history.
I enjoyed it much more than I thought I would, I have to say, because, with my limited experience of seeing the movies and the Batman Hellboy Starman crossover, I mean, that's been about it, honestly, in Itty Bitty Hellboy. I mean, I'm familiar with the character, but I haven't gone head first into finding out too much about him outside of what's presented to you in the movies, kind of the Reader's Digest version, that's with every character. But I enjoyed it much more than I thought I would. And again, as I said, I have a feeling, and you're probably going to prove me right, that this is a franchise that's very well suited for the 5 or 6 mini series format.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's actually, that's how the world was built, really, when it comes to Hellboy and BPRD and Ape Sapien, all of that. In fact, for a long time they didn't have the ongoings. Everything was just a self-contained miniseries that would tell one story and then it would end. And then the other miniseries, everything eventually did connect in. So there was a lot of linear storytelling, but it's all very self-contained. So you can just pick up a book randomly and it'll refer back to maybe some other incidents, some other plot lines that you may not have read, but it's very self-contained and it's perfect for anybody can jump on at any point and it makes sense.
Okay. I think probably new readers are going to have a better time with Hellboy than people like me who got into it like back when it was first coming out from Dark Horse, and I got incredibly frustrated at how little content there was for Hellboy fans because Mignola got involved with Guillermo del Toro, and he did the Hellboy movies and Pan's Labyrinth and creature designs for all sorts of movies. And the more that he worked on movies, the less he was available to work on Hellboy. And so Hellboy went from being something that was sort of like, 5-issue miniseries here and there to being like 2 issues and then, just a Mignola cover. And so for me, it was kind of like over time, it just like waned me off of his stuff. But my sister became a huge fan of the BPRD, and she has these enormous like hardcovers. And so I'm aware of the fact that like sort of after I left the series, it just suddenly the tap got just like turned on to full, and it's there's a lot more stability to like the writing and stuff long term, but yeah, it's probably better at this point now to like go back and just binge it now than having to wait the years and years for the next Hellboy series to come out.
I was just gonna say, like you said it right there, Hellboy, when it was just Mignola who was doing the writing, it did drop off. Like it was, you had it just hit huge in the early 90s, and he rode that wave into a lot more, I guess, notoriety, and Hellboy kind of dropped off. But right now, kind of like Brian, kind of like how Hickman has his team of artists and other creators that work very well with him, Mike Mignola does the same thing. He basically plots, but he works with great writers like John Arcudi and Scott Alley to flesh out all those ideas and these amazing story arcs. And Matt, your sister being into BPRD, that's kind of how I came back into it. I started with Hellboy and then said, Hellboy's okay, but BPRD just is amazing. It draws you in. You get to know who these people are who aren't Hellboy. All the background people, including, you get the fantastic, you've got Abe and you've got Liz, but you also have Kate, who's basically the director after Dr. Broom is no longer in the picture. There's a lot of other soldiers that come and go that have these great backstories that you just really get to know. And of course, the creators are not immune to just throwing people onto the wood chipper. Somebody like a character that you love is, for several miniseries and story arcs, then gets unceremoniously shot in the head, at the first page of the next story arc. So it's really fantastic. You really get to know the world building is just amazing. And I think Mignola kind of found his strength in being a plotter rather than just writing each issue, and got some great writers to work for him, and artists too.
And is it Guy Davis that does most of the art for BPRD?
No, it actually changes up a lot. But I mean, you've got it's weird to say, like a Mignola house style. So right. You're reading a Mignola-verse book because the artists have a very similar aesthetic. But you've got the Fiumaras, so Sebastian and the other Fiumara artist, Gabriel Moon Ba are also big contributors. But yeah, I mean the artwork has a big consistent vein to it, even though each artist kind of puts their own little spin, on the aesthetic. But it does kind of feel like a Mignola book, and it looks like a Mignola book. But they go through artists, lots of different artists switch up around story arcs and things, but it's very consistent.
And one thing I have to say is I never realized how much of an influence Kirby was on Mignola. In the Seeds of Destruction, there were two sequences. One where they have the release of the Seven Beasts, and then when Liz's powers fully manifest. Those would not look out of place in a Fourth World book. Yeah, it's still his own. It's strange, but I never would have said like, hey, there's an influence there, to the degree that, because I don't think there's anybody that hasn't been influenced by Kirby even through a backdoor. I wasn't prepared for how prominent it was, and since I'm not that familiar with his more recent output, hardly any output, I have to go back to like Cosmic Odyssey. How much does Mignola still do in terms of an artist now? Is it remarkably constricted now?
I think he does a few covers here and there. He doesn't really do
that's been it.
The interiors.
Because I'll be honest, Magnolia, I mean, that's one of the names that if I see that on a book, it's an automatic pass for me. I've never liked his art. But if you're saying that some of these Hellboy stories aren't drawn by him and it's him doing the script, I probably would give them a chance.
All right, I want to switch gears and bring Steve into something, because there's a book that we've talked about, but we've talked about it offline, and we've never talked about it on the show, to my knowledge. I may be wrong. Airboy, man, that first issue knocked my socks off. Steve, do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because there's something else, Airboy, that I would like to talk about.
Well, I think I know that Matt had talked about it last time. Well, not the last time, but the time
he
before
did?
last. Yeah,
Okay.
he talked about I think it was the second issue.
Okay, I'm maybe way off.
I haven't read Airboy.
Matt?
I read it and talked about it. Well, I was going to talk
That's
about
where.
it.
Okay, yeah, Brian did it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't think we did it on the show. I think we talked about it off mic.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a trip, and I haven't read the second issue, although I read enough to talk about it on Flame On. But
Yes.
seriously, like, I really like it. I'm really excited by Robinson being very honest about his past, or at least potentially honest. I mean, who knows? But like, it's a mess. I would even dare say it's a hot mess. I mean, and there are trans characters, which is part of the whole brouhaha. But like, this is a thing where, I mean, Bill, I figure you probably want to get into the issue of the second issue.
I haven't read the second issue yet.
But I have.
You know of the
Okay.
issue?
I know of things that happened within the issue, and maybe Steve can elaborate since he hasn't
Steve,
read it.
let's broach this subject.
Okay. I read the issue, and again, we mentioned the first issue. Yeah, it's a hot mess, but it's a wonderfully fascinating hot mess. I think a lot of it is fictionalized, obviously, or expanded upon in ways that probably weren't as truthful. But the second issue kind of continues that, crazy off the wall. Yeah, here's a comic writer and a comic artist. All they do is smoke a lot of pot, do a lot of coke, and have sex with strange women. At the end of the first issue, Airboy actually shows up, like the physical manifestation of Airboy, the character that's ostensibly the main character of the book, appears and is like, "What the hell is going on?" In the second issue,
it is comic book language to the hill, gentlemen. This will not stand. Yeah.
And in the second issue, they pretty much discuss this. They think that they finally hit that point where everything that they've been taking and doing has hit the hallucinogenic peak. So they think they're both hallucinating. And Airboy himself thinks that he somehow went into like some slovenly world where the Nazis won, because he's just disappointed with how drab and how everybody looks homeless, and the language is so terrible, and what kind of garbage has this world turned into. They kind of take him around the city and end up in a bar, and this is where the big controversy came out of it, where they end up in a bar that is it's a gay bar primarily, but also has a lot of trans patrons, and both James Robinson as well as Airboy end up in the bathroom in neighboring stalls, getting blowjobs from some of the trans women who were there. And it's a really hilarious sequence, I think, because James is like, "Oh yeah, go for it," and Airboy is just kind of shocked that one, that he's participating in getting having sex in a stall with someone that he doesn't know, and then here's this other freaky person that's been kind of following around. But the joke, and I think the controversy from it, because it's a joke in relatively poor taste, especially given the current environment, is that James Robinson comes out and he says, "Oh yeah, I got sucked off in the bathroom," and it's like, oh, it was a to use the T word, it was just some tranny, but it's really cool, it's awesome. And then of course Airboy comes out and is just horrified that the woman that he thought he was having sex with pulled up her skirt and there was a penis, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, this is just so horrible." And this is where I think the readers who had a huge problem with it didn't continue reading, because James Robinson's character of James Robinson explains, well, yeah, some men are actually like they are in transition to become women, or are women. He kind of explains it in a way that Airboy might understand, and that seemed to me pretty sensitive way of talking about it. But the fact that he did use tranny multiple times, I think kind of hit home that the general language being used needs to change.
I mean, Steve, you explained it so well that, like, I wish people who had reacted to this had, like, that, I don't know, there's like, and this is, it comes from a place of privilege. This is, again, what we got into on Flame On. It's the whole privilege versus, people who have these stigmas that are attached to them, and every time a certain word is uttered, that word has such huge power over them because of the culture, because of the stigma with it, that I can't relate. I'm not a transsexual. But at the same time, I know, and this is the whole I have a black friend argument, but I know I have transsexual friends. I have friends who are either full-on trans, or they're drag queens, or all points in between. And, like, the word is only as powerful as you make it. And when you have someone like RuPaul, or you have someone like James Robinson, and they're using it not as a derogative for their personal view. They're not trying to, like, stigmatize the trans community, but they're yet making jokes, or they're telling stories, or creating art that uses that word, that uses the culture, that uses the people, like, in a way that is, maybe not the most flattering, but is not unrealistic. I mean, let's be honest, not all trans people go to bars and give blowjobs in bathroom stalls. However, there are some trans people out there in the world, just like there are some straight people, just like there are some gay people that absolutely do this. I may have seen a few things in New Orleans. The point remains that it is not unrealistic. It is not a caricature to say that this kind of thing could happen. And the character of James Robinson in the book is reacting from a place of kind of being a little messed up. And the James Robinson, the writer, who people were upset at, is writing a story about a dark time in his life. So you put all that in context, there shouldn't be an issue. It should just be a truthful story, a truthy story. But yet people just demonized him instantly for just saying the word. And I have a hard time accepting that. But again, from a place of privilege, as a white male homosexual, like, it's hard for me to react any other way. You know what I mean?
Okay. you guys, some of the listeners may know, I had an ex that I actually stayed with while she transitioned. And I heard the term and the word tranny more from her calling other people that than I had ever heard before in my life and since after. And it is almost like I don't want to say a double standard, but there are people who are using this word as affection. There are these people who are using it as an affliction and as an insult. So, I mean, where do you draw the line? I mean,
well, I think that's something that gets established over time, and there's still this sort of gray area about, if it is a word that's so much used within that subculture itself as a descriptive, I think there should be a little bit of patience in gaining a view of that particular word as derogatory.
Absolutely.
A word that drives me crazy is when somebody uses retarded in the form that it's usually used as. And some of this comes back, and again, this is a point of privilege, but it's also coming from somebody who used to help coach a Special Olympic swimming team. I've seen what that word does to families of people with challenged individuals within their family. I've seen how devastating one throwaway comment can be to a 17-year-old girl who has the mind of a 4-year-old girl, and her parents are teaching her effectively how things are purchased at the supermarket. Mm-hmm. I've seen that myself. And I hate that. That's one word that if a friend of mine comes down and uses that in the form that it should not be used anymore, they get a talking to, because it's 2015. I don't think we're there with words like tranny or, that ridiculous controversy over she-male, at least from my standpoint. But again, point of privilege.
Yeah, I want, and I hate saying this because it comes from such a point of privilege, but I really want people who get offended easily to sit back and actually think about the context. Because when I was called a faggot growing up, and I'm sure, I don't have a strong, vivid memory. If it was by a friend of mine who knew I was a little, whatever, or if it was by something culturally like a RuPaul thing, or, some other gay cultural thing that was making fun of itself, like, I didn't take offense, because I understood the context in which the thing was presented. And even though I absolutely identified and felt like I was sort of that, not victim, but I felt like I could be a victim of somebody calling me that, I understood the difference. And I really feel like we're in a culture now, and I would never say culturally people should not say what they feel. Like, I'm not suppressing people's speech. I'm not demanding people, hold their thoughts back or whatever. But I am just saying, just think about the context. Put things in their proper place. If RuPaul is making fun of, she-males and transsexuals, but in a fun way that sort of plays at the culture, drag has done that forever, and that's part of the amazing thing about drag. Mm-hmm. And to get offended and to write these missives on Tumblr, which seems to be a popular place for a lot of this, and you just wear your bleeding heart on your sleeve, it does not empower you. I think it weakens you, because it shows everyone how much power they have over you. When I have someone now call me a faggot, and thankfully it never happened, or it hasn't happened in a long time, like, they have to be somebody that I really care about for that to have any effect on me. You know what I mean? Like, I won't give anybody that sense of privilege if they're just on the street and they yell, "Oh, hey, faggot." I can take it. You develop a thick skin being a little gay music major in a fraternity in college. You know what I mean? Like, you have to go through life's daggers and struggles to get that skin and to be able then to take a joke. But and I'm not saying that they're all well-crafted jokes. Sometimes they're really not, and they're offensive, and that's fine to identify. But man, just like understand where they're coming from and who they're coming from. And James Robinson has been nothing but supportive to the gay community over the years. Absolutely. I mean, his Starman, like series
Mhm.
for a young gay comic book fan was amazing, because that was one of the first moments when I saw a gay character that was organically gay, not like, for an effect. But
Right, and the introduction of that element to that character was matter of fact.
exactly.
It was matter of fact.
Yeah.
And even with other characters where there is a question of their past history, like the Shade,
Yep.
that's where it
Yep.
lied. It wasn't North Star with "I'm gay."
Right.
It was written by somebody who knows people within that culture
Exactly.
and knows how that isn't the only definitive of that individual. And it was refreshing to see that, especially in a book out of a mainstream
Yeah,
publisher.
I think a lot of this, it comes down to, when an ally uses a word that, in normal context, if you were walking on the street and somebody screamed, "Hey fag," or "Hey tranny," the reaction is different than if it were an ally, a friend, somebody who has been a champion for rights and for visibility for such a long time, like a RuPaul, like James Robinson, really, as a writer. But, and at the same time, again, I feel for people who do have the offense, you have permission to be offended, but also give other people permission to not be offended by it.
Well, I mean, and this is the thing. If going back to the RuPaul thing, or if this was just brand new, if RuPaul was brand new and using this, I could understand that. But RuPaul has been using "girl, you've got shemale, you tranny" as part of her shtick for 20 years. I mean, this is nothing new coming from RuPaul, and for them to all of a sudden now get offended by it, no, I don't think. And same thing with this James with Airboy. I think I think it's a mock outrage, and I think that hey, they need to be offended about something. They just don't realize that the person that they are offended by is also one of our greatest allies in comics.
Yeah. Well, it's all, like, I understand the reasons for being offended, but again, you can't punish everyone for maybe making a somewhat tasteless joke, especially on something that's very limited in its appeal. Airboy is not X-Men. Airboy is not Superman or Action Comics. Airboy is a very adult comic with a very adult sensibility and adult audience in mind. And there's a kind of maturity that has to go into reading this book. You have to understand the context, and I think if you read a panel or a line of dialogue outside of context, like we've been saying, you're going to not understand, where it's coming from, what follows that use of the word, or the tasteless joke. And also, this whole point, this book is about James Robinson kind of getting all of his angry emotions about his what he went through in recent years, in a very over the top fictionalized way. I mean, if this came out in the 70s, this would definitely be a comics with an X type book, that I could see being put out by Robert Crumb or somebody like that, or even a Harvey, American Splendor.
Harvey Picar.
Harvey Picar.
Picard.
It's got that kind of language, that self derogatory, self deprecating type of story, and an image of himself as an artist, as a creator, and this just kind of plays into it. And taken out of context, it's just a word that's offensive to many people. Put in the context of this book, it's a term that's thrown away by a person who then shows himself to be an ally of sorts. It's kind of a controversy to have a controversy. I don't know. I do understand that people do have to be offended by it, and some people take that to the extreme to just make it this diatribe, and we must burn him at the stake for daring to say a word like this. But look at who's saying it, look at where it's being said, and look at the context of not just how it's being used, but the whole picture. And the whole picture is, this is not a person that you want to idolize. This is a person who's in a downward spiral of the worst kind, and he can say anything, and it's not a genuine, genuine feeling of like, oh, I kind of want to be like this guy. I kind of want to use the same language that he's using. No, he's awful. He's having a breakdown. It's a mess. But in the same breath, he's also kind of saying, oh yeah, this is totally cool. Everybody does their own shit. Like we just totally banged this, this complete unknown woman. And again, I'm shocked that people made more of an issue about the word tranny than they did about how they're treating women. I mean, in this, if you women, they're just to have sex with. They're cheating on their wives. They're just like, hey, what is it? It's just a quick fuck. It's nothing. There are more derogatory things said about women than there are about anybody trans or gay or anything in this. If you're going to be offended about the right thing, and understand the context of it.
There's nothing offensive about an Eiffel Tower.
Oh no. Well, I don't know.
I'm
I think for an Eiffel Tower, there needs to be like facing in a different way. I think, let's see. One guy he was on his back. The woman was in the middle. The other guy was doing her other hole. I think it's.
I don't even know what that is actually. Now that I think about it.
A PB&J. I don't know. It's some kind of sandwich.
Arc de Triomphe, maybe. I don't
Arc de Triomphe. I just know that they had fantastic penises.
Oh my god! So that was the one thing on iFanboy. They were talking about this, and I was laughing. It was so great. By the way, iFanboy fans, Ron Richards is back, and that show. It's like you dial back 3 or 4 years ago, whenever he was there last. Like, it is magic. It is great, and they've actually talked about this as well. And I want to put out there just a contrary thing. As much as I do agree with kind of what everybody said, Oral from Flame On actually was a pretty vocal sort of dissenter in this argument when we had it. And again, his whole thing was, it goes back to, why is rape kind of a cheap and unnecessary storytelling thing in modern culture? And it's just because people out there who have been victims of rape, people out there who have been victims of being called trans or whatever derogatory term, like, it is something that is sore to them. It is an absolute wound of sort because they have had these experiences. And we have, I think, as storytellers and reviewers, the obligation to consider their perspective. And I absolutely do. I really do. I don't want, if I were to ever write a comic, I would probably steer well clear of things like this, just because I don't want anybody to be offended by what I'm writing. Like, that's not my thing, But at the same time, it is just really hard because, again, we know this guy, James Robinson. I mean, he has a known track record of being a LGBT ally. So, like, it's a really tough position, and I applaud his apology. By the way, if you read it, it actually was spot on for sort of owning the artistic license, but also admitting what we're saying. People are offended, and he apologized. He's like, look, I wasn't trying to really put people down for this. He was basically just telling a story about a terrible time in his life and how he really wanted to make that a piece of art. So, like, if you really want to sort of get more info about him, read his apology, and you will get a very good perspective into his heart. And I think a true perspective on, who he is as a person and as a creator. And we can't do it justice. I mean, it's really well written. So definitely, if you're offended or not offended, but mildly interested, go check it out. It's up on, I'm sure, a million places on social media at this point. Certainly his Twitter or blog. It's a tough issue. It really is. And I don't want to keep having these issues present itself in comics, but then again, it gives us this opportunity to talk about the issue and make people aware that it's an issue. So, you take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the Facts of Life.
Facts of Life.
I'm sorry.
I was going to bring Matt in to see if you had anything to add, but there's no better coda on anything than the Facts of Life.
Well, maybe if somebody could do a rendition of Girls, 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 come on.
Girls!
There you go.
You like that? Is that good? All right.
That's a clap, by the way.
Do we each have a favorite Facts of Life episode?
Oh,
Can we
The
admit
one where
that?
Natalie almost lost her virginity.
oh Lord.
The one with
Okay.
Tootie.
The one where she actually had more than 3 lines.
My favorite episode is her with Jermaine
Yeah.
Jackson. When she loses it, when Mrs. Garrett tells her she can't go to the concert. Oh my God. Justin, or is that not a show you watch?
I watched it. All I just remember is thinking I thought for the longest time Joe was a boy, and I thought he was cute. And when I realized, I mean, I don't know. I mean, God, I was like 8, so I don't know. But I like the ones where the later ones where Joe made up with her dad. I like that one. Those made me feel good. Those made me have the feels inside.
We got into a very deep discussion about some of the terrain covered by Airboy. And I read, because there's been so much spotlight on this particular series, I have a trade from the late 80s of the first 5 issues of Airboy from the relaunch in the 80s with Chuck Dixon and Tim Truman. Have any of you guys ever read these books from Eclipse? And again, I'm older than you, and you might not know about these. I'm taking that as a no. I'm taking that as a big no. Okay, well, if you do have a chance, it is collected as a book called The Return of the Valkyrie, and it brings forth not just Airboy, but other 1940s public domain characters.
Yeah. Yep. I do know this. I do know exactly what you're talking about. Okay.
So it brings in Skywolf and the Heap, and as I said, Valkyrie. And the art was supervised by Tim Truman, but after a point it switched over to Stan Walk. And again, these are names that are very familiar as early Kubert graduates and connections with the Alan Moore Swamp Thing. It was definitely an 80s book. You know, there's things where go at a slow pace, and then like, you know, there's like big events that happen off panel. You know, there's a little bit of clunkiness to it. But the one thing I was just not prepared for is, if you are familiar with Chuck Dixon's politics, he's very much to the right, and to see criticism of the Reagan administration's foreign policy out of the pen of Chuck Dixon is kind of jarring. But in terms of a straight action story, basically it covers the introduction of Airboy's son after Airboy leaves the story. That's all I'll say. And if you can find the books for cheap in the dollar bins, for that sort of high-flying adventure, but done in the 80s, done firmly in the time that it was set, you might enjoy it. So I went over to that. One other independent book, way independent, that I would like to mention was a book called Nathan and the Adonai that I picked up at FlameCon. This was the first time I had a chance to read it. It's written and drawn by Jezza Smiles. You can find his website at jezzasmiles.com, and there's also a Nathan and the Adonai Tumblr. And all I want to say is this is a hyper-gay legend of Zelda done by the people who do Venture Brothers. I think that is kind of the description.
Are you kidding me?
No. You might
Oh my
enjoy
God.
this. There's a whole lot of penis in this, a whole lot of penis. Long story short, Nathan is an adventurer. He has unfortunately lost track of the noble that he was safeguarding, and he goes out to find what happened to the noble. Bandits took his escort, and he gets trapped by an individual. We're not sure if it's the Adonai yet or not. Guy who is probably Australian by the tone of his dialogue, traps him in one of his traps, and he says, yes, anything in my traps is mine to eat, skin, or sell. And so he kind of eats him for 4 pages. It definitely earns its adults only tag, and if you have a chance to look at the Tumblr and see if that's up your street, it's a lot of fun. And I believe there's 2 issues out. I only have the first one, but I will be getting the second because I enjoyed this. And then I'm going to table a book because the second issue actually came out, and I'd like to take a look at that before I formulate certain opinions about the book. But for me, as somebody who's a little older than the other members of the crew here, one of the first independent books I ever got in the 70s was from Comley Comics, which was the first issue of Captain Canuck. We did get it in the States, and there was a relaunch of Captain Canuck. I know that Steve and Brian ran into, I'm not sure if it was Andrzejowski or it was actually Richard Comley at Heroes.
Yeah,
oh, you did? Okay. And I just want to reserve judgment on it until chapter 2, but what I've rather liked, and I'll cover that at a later point.
Do we have room for one more book? I don't know if anybody else has read this yet.
Oh, go ahead. We got a
Okay.
little bit of time.
The Spire by Cy Spurrier and Jeff Stokely just came out, not this past week, but the week before. And my LCS unfortunately didn't have enough copies, but they were able to get an issue 1 for me the following week, which was great. This book, I don't know if anybody else has looked at this. It's put out by Boom. Again, it's another great book that Boom's been putting out as part of their main label. But it's got a feel to it, and I think some of that might be from Jeff Stokely's art, but it has a feel of a Miyazaki penned story. The artwork, the feel from the story that Simon Spurrier is building here, this world that he's creating of a single spire of sort of like a collective city that's rising out of the desert, where all manners of people and creatures are living together. It's really fantastic. There's a sort of a mutant subclass, so to speak, that are kind of looked down upon by the, wealthy aristocrats that are more human in appearance. And the whole premise of the first issue is the leader of this city has died, and some other mystery, a murder mystery, sort of pops up around this that may or may not be related. And the main character, of course, is one of the police constables, who herself is a lesbian and also a mutant. So she's part of 2 different subclasses in this world that's there. Very fantastic, very fascinating. I'm really excited to continue reading this series. And if you love anything Miyazaki, especially Nausicaa or possibly Laputa, there's a lot of aesthetic touches in the artwork, as well as some of the plot devices that kind of bring that back to mind. So I really highly recommend it.
I picked it up, and I have not read it yet. It's back home. But when I saw Jeff post this up on Facebook, I got really excited because of the Miyazaki influence.
Oh yeah.
And I am thrilled that we're Facebook friends, but also he's not an unattractive sort of. I wouldn't call him cubbish even, but he's got a certain bearish quality to him. But that he's doing this art that just looks gorgeous. It really does. And no, I'm very excited for this. I will report back later once I have actually made it through the book. But very, very keen on anything Miyazaki influenced in the visual realm. So very excited.
Actually, there was one thing I wanted to ask about, and I managed to snag this at my comic store for $1. And I don't remember any of us talking about this when it came out last year, especially Brian. Has anybody read Grant Morrison's 18 Days?
I have it,
I have a copy
and
too.
I've never read it.
Okay, it's interesting. I mean, I know a little bit about the Hindu culture, and like I said, I was able to get issue number 1 for $1. I thought it was new, and then I realized it's 2 years old, and the whole thing is wrapped up already. But I didn't know if anybody else has read this, if they've liked it, if it from what I read the first issue, it seems amazing. It seems like him doing his typical world building. It's very deep, but it's a stunning book. But then again, you've got to like that the art was by Jivan Kang. Does that ring any bells?
Oh, I thought it was Becky Cloonan.
I'm looking right here. Got it right in front of me. Art Jivan Kang.
Oh wow, that's interesting. That totally fooled me. Whoever that is, they sure channel some good Becky Cloonan.
Yep,
that's fun.
But what's nice is, it tells the history of, it tells the lore of some of the Indian or the Hindu cultures, brings in the different gods and what it stands for. But I'm not entirely positive if this story is based on their actual religion, or if this is a story that's based off of his own storytelling just using, their myths or their religions as a basis. But either way, it was a great book. When I get back there, I'm going to be looking for the next few issues.
This book looks like $1,000,000
Okay.
bucks. The artwork's really cool. I love the costumes and stuff, and they sort of have like Hindu gods meets like Tron kind of costumes.
Exactly.
And the facial expressions and stuff are really cool. There's also sort of like a little bit of a Michael Avon Oeming kind of a quality to the line artwork, and this I didn't even really like understand what I was picking up. I just like grabbed it and brought it home with me. I mean, especially at $1, it was a very easy purchase. So
yeah,
I think there were only 2 issues published
that's a terrible shame.
of 18 days.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of. Yeah, I'll have to take a look at this. I think that it has a very confused publishing history, because I think this was a book that was originally scheduled for when Virgin Records was having their own comic book imprint, and when then that went south, I think Dynamite picked it up, but I don't think Dynamite. I think Dynamite maybe just published the first story. I would have to take a deep dive into this, but it does have a very confused publishing history, and I think some of the material that's going to be coming out or has come out is based on Morrison's plots more than him actually scripting it. But
I just
take a look. You've given me a mission. I have to read that. It's in the other room.
Yeah, I just did a kind of a Google
Yeah.
search, and it looks like there is a lot of it just being a free download, even on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't really find much actual gosh, I didn't even realize this back 2 years ago, but it doesn't look like, 3D at Dynamite, it contains 122 pages. So that's under free as well. So it's a shame that this didn't hit it off, because honestly, it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, we'll take a look and
All right.
figure out what the history is. All right, well, we've hit the last segment of the show, which we call the Woofs of the Week. This is a point in the show where we spotlight something that doesn't necessarily have to be comic related that we want people to find out about and sample and possibly enjoy. Let me do clockwise. I'm going to start with Mr. Brossard. Matt, what is your Woof of the Week?
I'm going to give my Woof of the Week to the Movie Bears. I watched their shirtless review of Magic Mike XXL. It was hilarious. They were awesomely hot as hosts and incredibly brave to do their reviews in their episode shirtless. Totally composed, totally into it. It was really impressive. So that's Will and Brad and Jim, and they had a guest host named Lovin. That was a fantastic episode. I really enjoyed it. And I learned more than I'll ever need to know about Magic Mike.
Okay. Steve, how about you?
I have an odd one. This is actually a book that I discovered in a used bookstore. Like Matt, I've been really just loving Providence by Alan Moore, and I wanted to know more about his his history with Cthulhu mythos and anything Lovecraft. And I came across a book that it's a trade paperback collection of 3 issues that were put out by Avatar several years ago, called Yuggoth Cultures and Other Growths. I checked. You probably, unless you find it used, you're not going to find copies of this book anywhere. But if you do find it, do pick it up. It's a collection of older comic stories by Alan Moore that hadn't been collected or even seen publication for years before they were collected in this book about less than 10 years ago. And there's some great sort of aborted storylines that he had started, an interesting sort of fantasy book that he was into, but also a lot of stories that he wrote that really kind of revealed his philosophy as well as his religious sort of skepticism or Gnosticism, I guess. But a lot of it really illustrates how deeply seated he was in the Lovecraft mythos. So it's really interesting reading that, going back to these older works, some of those old, from like the early '80s, all into the late '90s, early 2000s, and then reading Providence. Now, the book also contains some other Cthulhu and Lovecraft-inspired work by Anthony Johnston. But there's a lot of prose in here, some great interviews. It really gets you into Alan Moore's head, and I think it's perfect reading as a companion piece to Providence if you can find it.
Okay, well, who was the publisher on that? That was Avatar.
It was Avatar. So it looks like the relationship with Alan Moore and what he's been working on. It's shown a big continuance. So I'm pretty pleased because I think this was originally published as 3 separate issues back in like 2003. And then the collection in 2007.
Yeah, every time I hear Anthony Johnson, I always go to Anthony and the Johnsons. I'm thinking, Anthony Haggerty writes comics? I do that all the time.
I think the same thing.
All the time. All the time I do that.
You hear that weird voice and you're like, wait, what?
I gotta tell you, it must be amazing to possess a voice like that where you just hear a few notes, you know immediately who it is.
Right.
There's a cover of Anthony the Johnsons doing Landslide by Fleetwood Mac on a Fleetwood Mac tribute album, and it's instant that you know who this is. And that must be amazing to possess a voice like that. I would love to have that.
Yeah, I hear you.
Oh, I did just want to mention too some of the artwork. There's a lot of artists that work on this book that contributed. Jason Burrows, who is the artist on Providence, did have a couple contributions to the book. So,
this is a question I had for, I guess, Steve and Matt. As somebody who has not read Neonomicon, am I going to be totally lost with elements of this? Because I know Providence is technically a sequel.
Necronomicon, isn't it?
What?
Is it Necro or Neo?
It's Neonomicon.
Neonomicon.
Oh God, yeah. I'm thinking of Evil Dead. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the same. It's the same premise.
It's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. No, not at all. I don't think you're going to be.
Okay.
No, I think Neonomicon takes place sort of modern era, whereas Providence is squarely set in the 20s.
Okay.
Or actually, not even the 20s. The 1919, 1920.
Okay.
So yeah.
Brian.
So I have 2 real quick. One, Bear Week's going on up in Provincetown while we're recording this, and then I am painfully like less than 2 hours away, but whatever. You
missed the wrong day.
I missed a lot of there.
Post.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was an opportunity for me to go on Monday when we got in here, and I was recovering, and it just didn't happen. But my partner Pat's up there. He's promoting for Bear Bust. Bear Bust has announced some amazing musicians and presenters and hosts. He's got Varla Jean Merman presenting and judging on Saturday night and doing her show both as Varla Jean and as her boy. And I apologize, I can't think of his name, but he's a very attractive bear. He's got I believe he's announced, and oh my God, I'm going to be so pissed if I'm wrong. Steve Grand is going to be there now, it looks like. He's working on, if he has not yet announced, he will hopefully get Matt Alpert.
Yeah, I saw Matt Albert last week.
Yep. No, I remember you posting that, and I was like, oh, well, that's... So Pat's actually, like, he basically... It's just a matter of time. He and
his partner performed together at the show, and they did an AC/DC cover, and you would not believe like this like really misogynistic AC/DC song could be so beautiful in the hands of a different treatment. It was pretty cool.
I really have loved his music for a long time, and I'm really hoping he does make it down. A friend of mine who've actually done some arranging for Eric Hyman is coming. Mm-hmm. And I can't think of his name, and this is unfortunate, but there was a bearish gentleman from American Idol last year. He will be there as well, which again I'll get his name for the next recording. But and Where the Bears Are, they're all coming down, or at least 3 of them, to promote the Where the Bears Are. Which, if you haven't checked that out, and you are of a similar furry persuasion, It's a lot of fun and web series, internet series, lots of ridiculousness, lots of fun. So Bear Bust. So all of this is for Bear Bust. Bear Bust it's the 25th anniversary. It's in October, mid-October at the Parliament House in Orlando. Again, I beseech my fellow comic book bear brethren to come down because I can make things happen and we can get you in, and it'll be fun. And I will be there no matter what. I will have my Comic Book Bears T-shirt on at least one or two nights. I try to space it out, but it is a lot of fun. We're really trying to make. I mean, I shouldn't say we. Pat's really trying to make this a really fun and if you are in the bear community and you love bear music or you love bear performers or drag queens with bear sensibilities. I mean, all that we're missing is like Margaret Cho. At this point, if she wasn't touring and doing her stuff right now, she just came to Orlando recently. Like that would have been the cherry on the top of this Sunday that we're building, and it's very exciting. So I really hope that we can see some people. And if you're down there, look around. There might even be a geeky surprise or two that we're maybe going to do. I don't know. We'll see. But it's going to be tons of fun. The other thing I wanted to throw out there is I'm in Rhode Island. I'm in Newport right now. There's a local comic shop called Annex Comics. And I went there today to buy some books because I like to do that every now and again when I travel. They have an independent sort of self-published anthology called, surprisingly, Annex Comics. And flipping through it, it's just kind of ridiculous and awesome. Like it's black and white. It's ranging from very sort of cultish, realism to sort of surrealist stuff to some very low rent, sort of cheap humor to something that looks like Ren and Stimpy. So, I mean, honestly, if you ever have come through Newport, Rhode Island or Aquidneck, Middletown, Portsmouth, wherever, stop off at Annex Comics on Broadway and go check out the store. It's pretty small. It's pretty intimate, but man, the guy's really cool. They got some good indie comics they make, and they got all the major publishers, and so it's definitely worth stopping by if you're already here. So that's Annex Comics on Broadway.
Cool. I've heard of that shop before.
Have
I'm
you?
not sure in what context, but I've heard of it somehow.
Yeah.
Justin, how about you?
This week is pretty exciting for me and actually for thousands of others. The Boy Scouts of America have just did a major U-turn on their policy shift. They announced that the National Executive Committee is unanimously, which is amazing by me, approved a resolution allowing gay adults to serve as employees and volunteers. I've been working with a group called Scouts for Equality for a few years off and on. They're getting ready to announce I'm the chapter head of what's the Central or Eastern Wilds chapter of Pennsylvania, Scouts for Equality. Basically, what we're going to be doing from here on out is to, instead of being a force to get this changed, we are going to be a group trying to ease the integration. Talking to different troops, talking to different councils about, hey, this is what we need to do. This is how things need to work from here on out. But so I am massively excited about that. The actual ratification vote is going to be on July 27th, which is, I believe, next week. Or no, the week after. But this is bigger than what you can imagine because we've got so many thousands of people who will not let their children be in the Boy Scouts because of the ban on gays. And whether or not they're gay or straight, there are people who are refusing to let their children become part of a great group. So now this is going to open the doors for a lot of people, a lot of boys, and a lot of leaders, because this is actually also being retroactive. If you were removed or asked to leave because you were gay, you are allowed to reapply, which is amazing. So my wolf of the week is to the Boy Scouts and First Scouts for Equality.
Now that you have lost this amazing amount of weight, are you going to be back on the scouting summers next year or what?
I would like to be. I've already actually talked to the scout executive of the board. Like, this was before the vote had taken, but it was only like a week before. This has been in the works for a while.
Mhm.
We've known that this is coming. He made the comment about my certification being up this year. I said, yeah. I said I wouldn't mind getting it recertified, and he said, well, let's see what we can do about that. So there may be a chance I will be working with the Boy Scouts again next summer.
Okay, cool.
With my rainbow Scouts for Equality badge on it openly. So
Woo-hoo.
I look, hey, and I still have the beret. I still have the Oscar de la Renta beret from the 70s. So, and it,
Oh wow.
and it fits. It still fits my freaking head. So, yes, I can be Oscar de la Renta fabulous.
Okay. Well, my wolf of the week goes out to a rock opera that I saw last night. Unfortunately, this is part of the New York Musical Theater Festival, which is a very short-term festival. It basically just lasts through July, where works by you can't say by new performers, but new works by musical teams workshop things in front of audiences, and very often some of these shows have legs. This show will have legs, pun intended. Tanya and Nancy, the rock opera. It was 95 minutes of pure joy. Apart from the kitsch value, I mean, there were just so many funny things. Like half of the lyrics Nancy sang were "Why." It's if you know the skating scandal from the mid 1990s. It tells this story of Tanya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan. The action in the show takes place from the late 80s to the mid 90s, and the music sounds like it's from the late 80s to the mid 90s. You have a cast that amazes me that this cast had such a short period of time to prepare, because this group looks like they have been in out of town rehearsals for a month. It was remarkably tight, and I cannot believe that this will be the only time this sees a New York stage or a stage outside of the New York area. So if you want to go to Tanya and Nancy, the rockopera.com, you can find some information about the show, and I do think you'll be hearing about it again, because it was raucous fun. All right, well, we're going to wrap this one up, and we'll stay in the line a little bit where I explain to the boys what an Eiffel Tower is. We are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Stitcher Radio. You can find us on our regular iTunes feed through the Earth 2 Podcast Network. You want to send us some email, you can do so by writing something to comicbookbears@gmail.com. Until next time, I'm Billy Z.
I'm Justin Allen.
I'm Brian Pittard.
I'm Steve Morey.
I'm Matt Broussard.
You're going to hear an explosion and a woof. We'll be back again soon. Take care, everyone.
Woof!